Hello and welcome back to math class this Tuesday. I'm hoping that yesterday you guys were all able to watch the Brain Pop video that talked about coordinate planes and that you will remember what quadrants are for today. So you will notice the dot in the middle of the page. I have made a horizontal line. If you guys would do the same thing like that in your book, that would be great. We're going to call this our x-axis. So we're going to go ahead and label it. We've done a lot of work with number lines so far in math, and so you probably already know if this is my 0, positive numbers are going to go to the right. So let's go ahead and put some positive numbers on here. Go as far as you can and then stop, because it doesn't really matter how far we get. This is kind of our notes. And then we obviously know that negative numbers go to the left. So we'll label some negative numbers. I'm using a scale of counting by ones, as you can see. Okay, this is our x-axis. Well, now we're going to add our vertical line. So we're going to try our best to kind of come up here and make it as straight as we can. Okay, we're going to label this our y-axis. And we're going to also make a scale on it with counting by ones. We know that the positive numbers go above the 0. I might be able to get 5 on there. And then we'll do our negative numbers go below 0. Okay, so we have an example here of our coordinate plane. Horizontal line right here, x-axis, our vertical line, y-axis. Maybe you remember from last week, right here is our origin. So let's go ahead and label that. All right, so now we have what you can see 4 boxed areas with our y-axis and our x-axis intersecting. We have made what we would call a right angle, and we have made 4 quadrants. Now the first quadrant is in the top right, and we write those with Roman numerals. So if you would go ahead and label this quadrant, and we're going to use Roman numeral 1. We're going to go counterclockwise, and we're going to label this one over here Quadrant 2. And we're going to use a Roman numeral 2. Okay, continuing to go counterclockwise, we're going to label Quadrant 3 and Quadrant 4. So if you want to pause your video so you can do that, please do so. Okay, so hopefully you've labeled all these things. Now the reason why we're labeling our quadrants is so, for example, if I would ever ask you to plot a point, I might say, well, what quadrant is that in? And you should be able to know that we have quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, let's go down here to example number 2. It says all points of the coordinate plane are described with reference to the origin. Well, we labeled our origin at the top. What is the origin and what are its coordinates? Well, coordinates, we remember from last week, hopefully, are the 2 points that we would label where it is on the x and the y axis. And we know that the origin is actually what we call 0, 0. So if you would go ahead and write that down. And when it said, what is the origin? Well, the origin is basically where the x and y axis intersect. So I'm going to write the sentence, the origin is where the x and y axis intersect. Okay, it's a very important point because that's where we are always going to begin before we plot our points. Okay, let's go on to the bottom. To describe locations of points in the coordinate plane, we use blank of numbers. Well, this is called an ordered pair. So we're going to write ordered pair of numbers. We have our x and y, our ordered pair. Order is important. So on the coordinate plane, we use the form, and the form we're going to use is what we call, see the parentheses? The first number is our x-axis, and the second number is our y-axis. And if you notice, I put a comma between the two of them because I want it to be very easy for us to know that there are 2 separate numbers. The first coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the, well, our first one is the x. And the second coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the y. So we always are going to start at the origin. We have to move on the x-axis first, and then we can move with the y-axis. Okay, so once you have all of this written down, would you please go ahead and turn over to the next page? So on the next page it says, use the coordinate plane below to answer the parts A through C. Graph at least 5 points on the x-axis and label their coordinates. Well, I gave you 5 coordinates. If you would copy these down, -8, 0, -1, 0, 3, 0, -5, 0, and finally 6, 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and locate these points on our graph. So we're going to start, remember, at the origin. This says on the x-axis, let's label this as x and this is y. We have to go backwards 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Up 0, put a dot. This one says -1, 0. Start at the origin, go backwards 1, up 0. Okay, move over to the next one. Start at the origin, over 3, 1, 2, 3, up 0. 2 more, -5, 0. Start at the origin and go backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 0. And our last one, we start at the origin, we went over 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you will notice we've put all of our points on the x-axis. Well, what do the coordinates of your points have in common? Look very carefully. What do they have in common? Well, they all have a 0. And the 0 happens to be the second coordinate, which would be considered our y point. All right, so you will notice I put that each point has a 0 as a y coordinate. The y was the second number listed, and they're all zeros, and so I said 0 was all the y's. Please pause the video if you need to do that so that you can get that answer written down. Part C says, what must be true about any point that lies on the y-axis? Well, if I would have you continue to plot points everywhere on this axis that you wanted, no matter where you put that dot, the second number would always be a 0 because we would not be moving up or down with the y-axis. Okay, so if you notice, we found out that if we're on the x-axis, all of them are going to be right here, and the second coordinate will always be 0. So I wrote, if a point lies on the x-axis, the y-coordinate will always be 0. Go ahead and pause your video so that you can get that written down. Okay, so you notice I kind of covered up my paper here. We're going to now move on to problem number 2. Problem number 2 says that we are going to graph at least 5 points on the y-axis. So we're going to put them on here. Well, to make it simple, I wanted us all to do the same points. So if you would write down these ordered pairs, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, -2, 0, -5, 0, -7. Make sure you have your parentheses because it's an ordered pair. Once you have those written down, if you would then go ahead and plot the points up here on the y-axis. Now remember, you can always pause your video to make sure that you can stay up with me. Okay, so if you notice, all of my new dots are on the y-axis. Over 0 up 3, over 0 up 4, over 0 down 2, over 0 down 5, and over 0 down 7. Once again, what do the coordinates of your points have in common? Well, let's look at these. They all have a 0, but they all have a 0 in the x coordinate spot. Okay, so I put down here, each point has an x coordinate of 0. 0 is in my x spot. And so once again, what must be true of any point that lies on the y-axis? Well, in order for it to lie on the y-axis, we're always going to have 0 for the x coordinate. We always need 0 in the x coordinate spot. Okay, so let's go down to the last question. The last question says, if the origin is the only point with 0 for both coordinates, meaning this, okay, there are no other points like that. What must be true about the origin? Well, if you look, here's my origin right here, correct? Okay, it is what we call 0, 0. Well, the only thing that can be true then is that the origin is the only point on my picture right here that is on both the x-axis and the y-axis. It's the only spot where these two intersect. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and flip over to the next page, please. Okay, so without flipping your book back over, let's see if you can remember where the quadrants are. Where is quadrant 1? Okay, quadrant 1 is right here, so I'm going to label it up here. This is quadrant 1. And quadrant 2, let's label them. Quadrant 3 is this one. And quadrant 4. Remember, we use Roman numerals to represent our quadrants. So we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, let's think about this. If I wanted to move into quadrant 1, I would move over here. What direction is this? Is this positive or negative? This is going positive. And if I want to go up, that's going to be positive. So any number I would pick in this box would have to have my first number as a positive and my second number as a positive. How would I get to quadrant 2? Well, I start at the origin, I go backwards. Well, backwards would mean I would need a negative number. And then to go up, I would need a positive number. That's how I get to quadrant 2. How do I get to quadrant 3? I start at the origin, I go backwards, that's negative, and I come down, that's negative. Finally, quadrant 4. How do I get in here? In order to plot a point in this quadrant, I start at the origin, I go over to the positive numbers, and then somewhere here I need to go down, which would be negative. Okay, just a little note here to maybe help you on some of these things we have on the bottom. Okay, exercise 4. Exercise 4 says to locate and label each point described by the ordered pairs below. Indicate which of the quadrants the points lie in. Okay, so let me do the first one for you to show you what I want you to do. So I'm going to plot point A, over 7, up 2. So I'm going to go over 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to go up 2. I'm going to put a point there, and I'm going to label it A. Then I have to indicate which of the quadrants. Well, it's in this quadrant right here, which happens to be quadrant 1. Okay, go ahead and try B, C, D, and E. Pause your video so that you can practice. Those of you that are letting your video play and aren't paying attention are the ones that aren't doing well on your Google Forms. So please pause your video right now. Okay, so let's check our work and see how you did. We did A together. Here's B. B should be right here in quadrant 4. Okay, point C is also in quadrant 4. Point D should have ended up in quadrant 2. And point E should have ended up in quadrant 3. Now, if you're having a hard time doing this, please make sure you reach out to your teachers so that we can help you a little bit on a one-on-one basis. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and turn over to our next page. You guys are doing great today. It's so quiet in the classroom today. All right, let's look at problem number 5. It says, write the coordinates of at least one other point in each of the 4 quadrants. Okay? All right, so what I'd like for you to do to kind of help us out, and you can see I pressed so hard I can kind of see it through my book. Let's see what you can remember. Let's go ahead and draw down here our coordinate plane. So go ahead and draw one. We're going to get really good at this. Okay? And let's label our quadrants. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Now, it says up here, write the coordinates of at least one other point in each of the 4 quadrants. We want to start with quadrant 1. What point could I put in here? If I start here at the origin, what kind of point? Sabai, if you had to pick a point in quadrant 1, what would you say? 2, 7? Okay. So I would go over 2 and up 7. So let's put that on here. Over 2, up 7. Sabai, you will notice you gave me what kind of numbers? You gave me 2 positive numbers. So let's put over here, quadrant 1, remember, are 2 positive numbers. Okay, very good. All right, Emiliano, I want a point in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is right here. What kind of ordered pair could you give me? If I start the origin and I go backwards and up. Backwards and up means you need to give me a negative number first and then a positive number. So what would your negative and positive number be? You said negative 7, positive 3? Okay. Well, let's go up here and let's put negative 7 and positive 3. Okay, I need a point for quadrant 3. Sean, let's go to quadrant 3. Here's quadrant 3. If you could tell me, how can I find a point in quadrant 3? I start at the origin. I have to go backwards. Backwards is negative. And then I have to come down. So that would be another negative. Sean, if you had to give me a point, what 2 negative numbers would you say? Negative 5 and negative 5 again? Okay, well, let's go up here. Negative 5 and negative 5. Very good. Finally, I need a ordered pair for quadrant 4. We start at the origin. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to do this one. We're going to start at the origin. We're going to move positively. So I have to have a positive number first. And then I have to move down. That's going to be a negative. Let's see. What could they be? What did you say, Michelle? Positive 2, negative 6. All right. Well, let's put on here positive 2, negative 6. Now, obviously, the ordered pairs that we put here are not the only points in those quadrants. Would it work for me? Could somebody have told me 0, 7? Let's go down here and let's look to see. If I would start here and start at 0 and go over 7, I'd land about right here. Is that inside a quadrant? It's not. That is not inside a quadrant. That is on what we call the x-axis, and so this point would not work. The same thing would be if I would say, well, let's try 7, 0. Well, I did the point wrong here, didn't I? Over 7, up 0 would be here. Over 0, up 7 would be up here. So this would not work. You guys got to keep me straight here on a Tuesday morning. So this would not work because they both landed. One landed on the x-axis. One landed on the y-axis. To make sure Mrs. Houck has it straight, this is over 0, up 7. This one was on the y-axis. This one is over 7, up 0. And that's on the x-axis. So these points would not work for picking an ordered pair for the quadrant. You guys got me again in a mistake. Okay, so what I would like for you guys to do for your homework is the problem set here on lesson 15. Problem number 1 says that you are to name the quadrant in which each of the points lies. If the point does not lie in a quadrant, specify which axis the point lies on. So for example, this one right here, if I went -2, +5, I'm going to land in quadrant number 2. So I'm just going to put that one. Okay, so the first one's been done for you. Do the rest. This is a 9.2. So that means you're going to go over 9 and a little bit farther and then up 7. Okay. Problem number 2 says Jackie claims that points with the same x and y coordinates must lie in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. That's these here. Do you agree or disagree? So she's saying they have the same She claims that points are the same X and Y coordinates, so they're the same numbers, like 2 and 2, 7 and 7, -3, -3. So think about this as your challenge problem. Thinking if you agree or disagree with Jackie. And finally, problem number 3, locate and label each set of points on the coordinate plane. So you're going to locate for this one. I would say I would like for us to cross some of these out because I think it's going to get kind of bunched up on your paper. So I want you to go ahead and cross out A for me. And let's go ahead and let's cross out C. So the only one I want you to focus on is problem B. I want you to go ahead and locate and label these numbers on your coordinate plane. Okay, and then it says describe similarities of the ordered pairs in each set. We won't need to do that. I just want you to put these over here, and then tomorrow we'll see how you guys did graphing these points. Okay, hope you guys all have a great day, and I will see you all on Wednesday.